When we all thought that the worst game of the year is behind us after Gollum, soon after that there shows up a new competitor to the scene, Skull Island: Rise of Kong. This video game, and believe me, it's hard for me to even call it a video game, it's just something else. First, let me present to you who is responsible for this pile of shit. We have studio called Iguana B, who brought to you such hits like G.I. Joe Operation Blackout. Also the publisher, Game Mill, whose portfolio of dogshit copy-paste games is richer at this point than Ubisoft's. Not only they published Kong and G.I. Joe games, but also brought to you hits like Cobra Kai 2, Zombieland, Double Tap, and the most recent one, released few weeks before this one, Avatar: The Last Airbender: Quest for Balance. Not only all of these games look and play like mobile games, excuse me, I think I just did great disservice and insulted much better than this mobile gaming. So, Kong, what is the premise? What is it like to play as a great ape that slaps the living shit out of the monsters on an island? Well, it's retarded. The whole premise is that one dino-looking thing killed your parents and you want to get revenge on the creature. At the beginning, the game presents to you few abilities that you're going to be able to use to progress through this wasteland when everything looks like a diarrhea copy-pasted by an intern that was allowed to eat only after he replicates the same shit at least 100 times. Everything in these stages looks the same, to the point where the game turns into fucking labyrinth. And one wrong turn may result in you going back from stage 3 to stage 1, with no way of going back to the stage where you came from, meaning the stage 3. For how do I know it? Because it happened to me when I was playing this magnificent work of art. So what are these magnificent abilities that you are given at the beginning of the game? Well, you can stomp the ground to break the ground, you can roar at the wall to break it, or you can jump higher than normally. And the funny thing is that these abilities are taken away from you second after you've progressed through the first stage, which turns out to be a prologue. Your moveset is basically go beat the enemies, stun the enemies, and jump. That's your moveset for the majority of the game, so don't get excited. Prologue ends with parents dying and Kong wakes up as an adult few years later, has a Vietnam flashback, and decides to go and kill the son of a bitch that killed his family. So it's so random that I just can't wrap my head around it. As the stages go, everything looks the same. You have Waterfall Valley, emptier than a desert fields, forest, caves, and then again forest. And to be fully honest, you don't have to really go through the game as the creators intended. You see, the game design is just go through the area, pushing forward, defeat the boss, land yourself in the next area, then repeat the next area, the next land, the next boss. But when I got taken back from area 3 to area 1, from right before the boss battle, because I took the wrong turn and I visited some place that I shouldn't have visited because their game has some collectibles in it, I went back, I fell down, and I couldn't go back the same way that I came back to area 3 to finish it with a boss battle. In area 1, when I was stuck at this moment because I would have to progress through area 1, 2, and 3 again, I started roaming around and I found a cave that required ability to pound the ground to open the passage, which I didn't have. And it just happened that the game is so fucking messy and poorly coded that someone forgot to actually put a wall there. So I fell down through the blockade, and that landed me in a stage 4 of the game, without defeating the boss at the end of the stage 3, which was a story-heavy boss battle, by the way, the one with the JPEG scene that you may have seen on the internet. Turns out, if you're lucky enough, you can skip the entire game. You can actually go to this cave in stage 1, jump down, and you are at this stage 4. The stage 4 doesn't really require from you any abilities that you're going to unlock through the game, because You unlock the abilities as you progress through the boss battle. The entire caves are fully completable without using any ability. It just requires from you to jump to the places that you normally wouldn't, and the game is going to get you through it. But unfortunately, the caves are even bigger labyrinth. You need to stare at the same looking places over and over. Nothing is distinguishable, nothing is indicating that you're going the right way. And this theme is present throughout the game, but the caves are probably the worst offense in the entire game. But do not worry, you have a map for every stage. That is the biggest steaming pile of shit of a map I've saw in my entire life. This map shows you nothing. It doesn't show you where you are, it doesn't show you where you can be, nothing is distinguishable. You just have lines and you have to decipher it. No points of reference, no nothing. The most useless map in the entire gaming industry. Everything looks fucking same. Walls in the game, maps in the game, everything is bad. And walls are acting in a weird way, moving around and becoming an actual walls when you are close to them. Graphically, this looks actually worse than 99% of the games released on N64. Kong, for some reason, when he moves, Kong for some reason leaves clouds of smoke behind him as he walks, meaning either he can't stop farting or maybe he's a diesel. You also have the skill tree in the game. I still haven't figured out what for you actually receive a skill point, because fighting the enemies gets you nothing, so you can just speed pass through enemies and nothing is going to be lost. It feels like the points are given for the progression, like, I don't know, clearing the objective, completing the boss battle, or maybe clearing the area when the game locks you in the arena and you have few enemies. Yes, you guessed it, all the enemies look the same and move the same. Usually you have small enemies and large enemies in a single arena, and you have to slap the living shit out of them, and that is going to be all. For these things, probably you receive these skill points. For the entire game, you can just stun enemies and slap the living shit out of them, and they are not even going to be able to hit you most of the time. So you even are going to forget that something like this fucking skill tree exists. Skills like a ground pound, large jump, roar, that breaks walls, aren't unlockable from the skill tree, so everything in the skill tree is pointless because the game is also too easy. Also, if it comes to the moveset, you can perform finishes on the enemies that start glowing red. This gives you back some portion of HP. I didn't perform any finisher for the entire time I spent with the game, and also you can pick up the enemy, the smaller one, and throw it away, which also I didn't do for the entire time when I was playing a game. There's also a third one, also useless. You can pick up a stick from the ground, and as long as you press the key responsible for holding it, for keyboard it is F, you can hit the enemies with it, which also is useless because the same amount of damage and quicker you can do just slamming them using your fists. Boss fights are also amazing. First one, you have a dildo looking worm that wants to slap you, does it even when you are too far and is not going to touch you, you're still going to be stunned. At some point I had to die in the fight because for some reason the enemy stopped taking any damage. Throughout the first fight, at least the first stage of it, the worm would slam against a rock and knock itself out. That gives you a time to beat the living shit out of him, but at the same time, after the second stage of the battle, he stops getting knocked out. So when I died and I had to reload the save, the game forgot that the first stage of the battle exists. So the worm would behave like it does from the second stage of the battle throughout the entire battle, making the battle incredibly harder to get through and more boring, because at this point the best solution was to just throw infinite amount of rocks on him. Yes, you can actually pick rock from everywhere. The greatest game design right there. This is 2023 gaming. After that, we have a stone throwing crab, which The entire fight looks just like this you see on the screen. Do not worry, it will not move. You just have to spam one button over and over and over and over again, and you going to be victorious. Third boss fight, I wasn't able to witness because it took me to the stage 4. This third boss fight is the one with the JPEG, and I unfortunately skipped it because the game just threw me to the stage 4 and I couldn't reload the save because I tried, and the save is one main save and 4 autosaves. After a few minutes I had no saves from the previous stage, so I was stuck in the caves and I couldn't go back after without the completing of the caves. And to be honest, traversing through the stage 4, I was so tired and unimpressed that I wished I could have just played Gollum for the second time, or maybe the third time. At least someone gave a fuck when creating Gollum. People actually tried, and it turned out what it turned out to be. This, nobody gave a fuck. I was bugging the game to push forward because there was no way to go back. After you traverse through the caves full of spiders, which jump without bending any limbs, you end up fighting a big spider, and after this big spider you have a big body of the game, and that's the end of the game. Which both of these boss battles I didn't give a fuck enough to play past the refund window, which I reached at the end of stage 4. I was at 2 hours and 45 minutes, and asking someone to pay 40 bucks for this pile of shit is actually a scam of the century. The fact that you can skip the half of the game because someone didn't put a wall in the place when the wall should be is just unimaginable. It's like these people thought only about making a quick buck, but there is one problem. Nobody besides few YouTubers and masochists are going to buy this shit. So the money you make probably won't even give you back the production cost. Kong game from PlayStation 2 looks like this, and this is the piece of shit that released on PlayStation 5. Recommended GPU for this game is the same as a minimal one for Cyberpunk 2077. This game also uses Unreal Engine 5, and even on RTX 3060, after getting into caves, the game starts losing frames. Sometimes it dipped 40, maybe even 30 FPS. Also, there is a feature in this game when you just freeze when you go to the place you're not supposed to. Game are just going to freeze you inside the wall or beneath the ceiling, or even jumping up and down on the enemy, and you're going to be forced to reload past saves, forcing you to repeat certain parts of the stage, wasting your time even more. What is even funnier, games like Alan Wake 2 are getting digital only release, and games like Skull Island, Rise of Kong actually released physically on PlayStation 5 and Switch. Imagine spending 40 bucks for the game like this if you are an unaware buyer. Imagine receiving this game as a gift for holiday when you are a kid. The lack of shame in today's gaming industry is appalling. At least right now Ubisoft and EA Games has new players to compete against in a race to the bottom. And yes, I did get my refund, thank fucking god. At least I can give this money to the people who actually give a fuck or two.